It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? Good morning. Today is February 13th. Oh, geez, that's an unlucky number, but luckily it's a Monday, so we have nothing to worry about. My name is Danny Taro, and we are going to jump into today's headlines for Canada. We got some ridiculous news coming out of where we live here in southern Ontario, mostly because John Tory, the mayor of Toronto, is resigning amid a scandal, and Doug Ford also embroiled in several scandals and investigations of his very own. But before we jump into any of that, we want to just talk about what everyone is talking about. I mean, everyone's talking about all these things. It's a big news day here in Ontario. But the US shot down flying objects over Lake Huron as Canada works to recover wreckage in Yukon. Sorry, that's one flying object over Lake Huron, but there have been four in total. This is including the original balloon that was attributed to China. China has claimed that it's their original balloon, but also that it's just a weather balloon that flew off course. That original balloon has been shot down, obviously, and now there are several other unknown objects that have been flying over Canada and the United States. The Pentagon here is saying that one of the objects over Lake Huron was octagonal with strings hanging off and no discernible payload. So a lot of people are speculating, like, what is going on here? What are these objects? This personally sounds like a box kite to me. So, we got balloons, maybe we got kites. Nobody really knows what's going on, but I think a lot of fear is being stoked. So Pentagon officials are also saying that despite close scrutiny of radar activity, it's not clear what the objects are or how they stay in the air. We're calling them objects, not balloons, for a reason, says General Van Herk. So again, nobody really knows what's going on. There's all these kind of like random objects. There's another one in the Yukon, and Canada is sending a recovery team. There's also the second object shot down on Friday over the North Slope of Alaska. I think they're trying to recover that as well in minus 44 degrees. And then they're also planning to recover today the original balloon that started this whole trendy story. They're going to try to recover that today off the waters of South Carolina. So it seems like there's just objects everywhere. Canada and the US is shooting them down through the NORAD agreement. And I guess we're just going to keep following this story. China is also accusing the US of flying more than 10 high altitude balloons in its airspace during the past year. So I don't know. It's kind of strange that this is coming out after these objects have been found over Canada and the US. It does seem a bit suspicious that it's like, hey, we're flying balloons over you, you're flying balloons over us. But I'm kind of surprised that China wouldn't just like call attention to this, maybe not as a reaction. So it is a bit suspicious, and that's what people are calling it. Again, this is from, I don't know, someone in national security, Adrian Watson in the US. So take it with a grain of salt. This is the latest example of China scrambling to do damage control. It has repeatedly and wrongly claimed the surveillance balloon it sent over the US was a weather balloon, and to this day has failed to offer any credible explanations for its intrusion into our airspace and the airspace of others. I guess Canada is just like others. We don't even get name dropped in this. So, I guess it's hard to know what to believe in this situation. Both countries, the US and China and Canada, kind of like stuck in the middle. They all have their interests to demonize China. Even in this other article, this first article we were looking at, they are saying that potentially one of these objects is attributed to Russia. So there just seems to be some geopolitical politics happening here. I would not be surprised if the US had balloons over China, nor would I be surprised if China had balloons over Canada and the US. So again, we're kind of just watching this situation, hoping that it doesn't lead to anything serious. Hopefully that no wars break out over these balloons. And yes, we're all of these major world powers are spying on each other. That should not be a breaking news headline. But here we are, just looking at these balloons in the air, these kites and fighter jets shooting them down. So uh, that's what's going on, and we'll probably check back in on this as the week progresses. Um, in other news, a lot of people are speculating that the John Tory story about him having an affair was leaked. So, as a way to do cover up for what is actually a bigger scandal here, which is Doug Ford's corruption. So I think it's really important to kind of keep the focus here on Doug Ford, because this is impacts us a lot more than John Tory having consensual sex with a staffer, even though that is very scandalous in its own right. So Ford calls questions about stag and doe party for daughter ridiculous. So, Doug Ford's daughter got married. There were wealthy developers who were part of the party, the Stag and Doe, which is a party to raise money for a wedding. Weddings are expensive. You need a lot of money to have them, I guess, even if you're Doug Ford's daughter. So Doug Ford is claiming that there was no conflict of interest with these wealthy developers who want to develop the Greenbelt, who were at the Stag and Doe party and donated money to his family. He's claiming that there is no conflict of interest, and that J. David Wake, the integrity commissioner, has cleared it 1,000%, not 999, but 1,000%. So if you're unaware with how percentages work, there's really no point in going over 100%. But Doug Ford is here saying 1,000%, which I have a feeling that this statement is going to come back to bite him in the ass. Because we might find out that it's not 1,000% and it's not even 100%. So Doug Ford going on here saying, I think that's the first time that's ever come out in Canadian history, someone asking about someone's daughter's wedding. And it's like, okay, maybe this is the first time in history. Is it? I don't really know. I don't even know how you would look up something like that. But maybe that's not a great thing, that you're making history in this way where you're like so corrupt. Literally, like every event that you go to seems to be some sort of example of corruption. A new example in Canadian corruption. So Doug Ford, playing defense here, is saying that he actually believes in protecting the green belt, and the move that he is making, it means that more land will be inside the protected area, but he's just redistributing it to the advantage of his wealthy developer friends. And the housing crisis has made it necessary to open 3,000 hectares of the Greenbelt land to build up to 50,000 homes. So, I mean, there's a lot of doubt as to if this could even happen or if it's even realistic. And it's adding 3,800 hectares of land elsewhere to the 800,000 hectare protected zone. So I mean, it's kind of just like ridiculous. It makes it seem like, oh, he's doing something good for the environment, and maybe we could add these hectares to the green belt and protect them without removing 3,000 hectares first. But the important part of the story here is that he is corrupt. He's in bed with these wealthy developers, and it doesn't really, this 800 extra hectares of protected land, that's not really the story. And I'm assuming that the space for the green belt was there for a reason. So there's also a pretty great opinion article about this, and this author here is saying that it's worth noting that Mr. Wake didn't conduct an inquiry, but instead gave an opinion based on the information Mr. Ford supplied to his office. So based on that information, Mr. Wake said there was nothing to indicate non-compliance with the Members' Integrity Act. But this was not part of an investigation or an inquiry. It was kind of just like an off-the-cuff remark. And if there was to be an inquiry, we might find different results. So when Mr. Doug Ford here, is saying 1,000%, he's actually just referring to like one unofficial statement from an official, So definitely something to keep an eye on. Hopefully, there actually is an inquiry. There are already several investigations going on, not involving the Stag and Doe party. So, we basically know that Doug Ford is a corrupt POS, and it's just a matter of how this situation is going to come to light. So, also just to name the developers here, it's the Toronto Star reported the names of 2 developers invited whose businesses have been affected by the decisions of Mr. Ford's government. So that's invited to the Stag and Doe, and it's Mario Cortellucci, who the Star said sat at the premier's table at the Stag and Doe and has properties that obtained provincial zoning orders. And also developer Shakir Rematula's companies own property that Mr. Ford's government recently removed from the province's protected Greenbelt area. So Doug Ford obviously has said some pretty ridiculous things about this. He's like, I've been in government for 30 years. Of course they're my friends. And it's just like like he's like friends with like everyone in Ontario. So if you just see Doug Ford in a public space, you should probably give him some money or some land to grease his palms. All right, so moving on, this is going to be our last story for the day. Just a quick rundown today about these 3 major headlines. What happened? So John Tory, as you probably heard, this was big news that happened like Friday night, has resigned from his position as mayor of Toronto amid a scandalous affair with a young staffer. So it's pretty gross. I think he's like 38 years older than the staffer that he was, had power over. It's a really disgusting abuse of power. And, a lot of people are saying that like, oh, it's consensual. And yes, I guess if this was just a normal consensual affair, he wouldn't really have to resign. But since it was someone who was working under him, I think it's very important actually that he resigns. Because yeah, it's an abuse of power, and it's also just like shows like a huge um lack of resentment. Oh, Ribbert in chat is saying announced intent to resign. So has not resigned yet. Yeah, this resignation is expected to come, I think, by Wednesday. I guess he could still pull the rug out from under himself and not resign, although I think what would be the point of that? We don't know, but this whole situation is pretty weird, so you never know. So the author here of this article is saying that this is leaving a power vacuum in Toronto, and there are going to be a lot of people who are maybe positioning themselves for the position of mayor. It's a really great opportunity, really, because I feel like amid a scandal like this of John Tory, who is aligned with like conservatives, there might be a chance to be like, hey, why don't we actually have a progressive mayor in there? So I guess the other important news is that the budget has to be voted on within 30 days of its release. And now this is something that happened on February 1st. So basically it has to happen by the end of the month, maybe early March, I guess. We have just another 2.5 weeks before they have to approve this budget. So obviously there's not going to be an election and a new mayor within that time. So, council is kind of left in this really tough position where they kind of have to steer the ship without a leader, or a leader who is like in the midst of a scandal. So they will have their deputy mayor, I think, step in as the interim mayor. But and then after that, people are speculating they can appoint a new mayor, but because there's so much time left in the term, they will probably have an election. So one of the political strategists here, who was a former aide to NDP leaders Andrea Horwath and Jack Layton, said the left needs to rally around a strong candidate that can win across the city and not just downtown. It's time for Toronto progressives to pick a potential winner, not just pick a fight to make a point, Mr. Ball said. So taking a very kind of pragmatic approach here, saying, hey, we don't need someone who's like ideologically perfect, but someone who is just someone who can win and make some necessary changes to Toronto. The stakes are too high, with people feeling less safe, transit and traffic still a mess, and the cost of living through the roof. So yeah, there's a lot of problems going on with Toronto right now. It has had a lot of difficulty covering from the COVID era, as a lot of major cities have. Um, Transit has been a huge concern. The dying downtown, because a lot of the public spaces, or sorry, office spaces have gone empty, and people are of course wanting to work from home still and not make the transition back to the office, which I think fair enough. But you also have to find a way to like stimulate these downtown businesses and make sure that downtown doesn't become a wasteland. Um, so yeah, also, how does it even pay its bills while keeping taxes within reason? How does it encourage people to keep living in Toronto and not move out of the city for more affordable lifestyles? And should it reject or support the strong mayor system, which has just been imposed by Queen's Park and was embraced and encouraged by John Tory? So again, that is something, I guess, would I believe in a strong mayor system if we had a progressive mayor? Maybe, but also that strong mayor system also has to work in tandem with the goals that are set out by the province. So I don't really know if that's something that we want, nor is it something that the left should necessarily embrace, because if we get kind of framed as not following a democratic process, even though this is a process that John Tory and Doug Ford have subverted. It's just, I don't know. To me, it's not really a good look, and we should try to do things kind of like as cleanly and as democratically as possible. So, later in stream today, we're probably going to go over John Tory's speech. A lot of people are saying that he was not the worst mayor, but in my opinion, not really a great mayor at all. Like, he was kind of like the Sleepy John mayoralship. Is pretty boring. So we'll be keeping an eye on the election. We'll probably have an election stream if people are feeling that, and in the near future. It'll probably be like several months away, but it's always fun to have election night streams. It gets people interested, and hopefully we see a new progressive mayor of Toronto. So thank you if you've made it this far. Please like and subscribe and ring the bell. You can maybe comment how you're feeling about this Doug Ford situation or this John Tory situation, and also what are we going to do about all of these UFOs flying over Canada in the US. Whatever we do, I hope it's not something that escalates tensions between Canada, the US, Russia, China, whatever. I hope we can just keep chilling over here in the cold, cold north. All right. Peace out, everyone.